Hello, Vicki. How are you today?
Hi, Donna. Good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I've brought Vicki with me today for this chat about instrumental transcommunication because she has 20 plus years experience with this, and I have just recently received this ability to allow spirit to use the type of device I have to send and manipulate sound waves, my voice, the static that I'm on. You might call it EVP. I talked a little bit about this in my last video that I did. You might call it EVP. I like to call it Spirit Eclipse right now because Spirit gave me that cool word, but I also call it ITC. And I was introduced to Vicki through a mutual friend, Tanya. Shout out to Tanya Berg from Continuing Wellness or Life Continuing. She has a podcast also, and she said, well, you might want to reach out to Vicki. And then maybe this person or that person. So I tried a bunch of people and I got some emails back, but nobody was really giving me the answers that I was seeking until I found Vicki. And Vicki agreed that, oh, I think Donna may be onto something here. So I'm going to give her some support. So that's the first thing I want to say about Vicki. She was a huge support to me and my confidence that this was happening and that everything I had figured out over the first 3 months on my own had already been figured out over the last 20 years. And I like that. I like that I figured it out myself because
Yeah.
that's the type of medium I am and that's the sort of person I am. So Vicki, why don't you give my listeners a little background about how this started for you?
Well, okay. So I guess my interest in it, I've always had an interest in the afterlife, but my interest in instrumental transcommunication started way back in the early 90s. Um, I had a subscription to the Noetic Sciences Review and went out. I can still, it was a beautiful spring day. I can still feel that day. I was barefoot, went out to the mailbox to get my mail, and there was my Noetic Sciences Review. And in it was an article by, it's funny I said in it, because in it is the name of Mark's group. In it, there was an article by Mark Macy, who at that time was part of the INIT or INIT group, the ITC International group that is now disbanded. At any rate, there was an article by him in there. And among other things, it dealt with the Harsh Fishbox over in Europe, whose television turned on when Frederick Jurgensen, one of the pioneers of ITC, passed away. At the moment he was being buried, his face shows up on their TV. Okay, so I'm looking at this going, oh my God, Braden. So that's my son. So I get him out there. I go, Braden, look at this. Listen to this. Look at this picture. We have got to try this. He goes, yeah, we really have to try this. Because he was really into that kind of stuff too. So he was about 12 years old at that time. So we turned on our analog recorder and we actually could hear voices. But mind you, this was way before the ability to edit, to amplify, to denoise, so we fairly quickly lost interest. We thought, okay, that's very interesting. And we certainly believe in this stuff that Mark Macy is presenting here. I mean, he would get phone calls from Konstantin Raudaba, another pioneer. At any rate, so that was my initiation. And then a few years later, when Braden was 20, he passed away in a kayaking accident with his best friend. And so, of course, devastating. It's still devastating, but one of the first things I thought of was, well, we're both mediums, so that's good. At least I can hear from him and he can hear from me. I didn't know about, I didn't even remember about ITC or EVP then. It didn't cross my mind. And it took a while before I really felt him around. Some people don't feel their loved ones right away. And it took a little while for me to feel him around. But the first time I heard from him, I mean, I really heard from him. He started leaving me messages on my answering machine, just unbidden messages. And they followed a pattern. And the pattern was exactly what he would say to me on voicemail messages in real life. He would say three things. He would say, "Mom," pause, long pause, and then pick up the phone, another long pause, and then his embarrassed triangle mouth noise. If I wouldn't answer. Okay, so in the space of a few days, I got 3 EVP. The first one was "Mom." The second one was "Pick up the phone." And the third one was
And tell us, that was back when we had when almost
answering
everybody
machine.
had answering machines. And was
Yes.
it digital or was it analog then? Like a tape?
It was a digital answering machine.
And you never heard the phone ring. It was just the message was there, or maybe you were gone.
Okay. Usually I was at work, but there was one time when, a couple of times actually, the phone was ringing and he knows I never answered the phone. You see, he continued to leave a couple more messages until I started doing this myself. He knows, and he knew that's why he had the "Mom, pick up the phone" routine. The was, "I know you're listening to me.
Right.
I know you're not picking up. You don't want to give me a ride home," or whatever it was, right?
That was when he was in the physical world.
Right, when he was in the physical.
Yes.
So, it was just like, it was perfect for him to do that. And then the last thing he did was leave me a little rap ditty. "You aren't home. Hey, Mom, I can say that I don't know why," or something like that, right? And I really wasn't home that time. But it sounded so much like him that I had my husband listen to it. And, I think I told you this before, he gets a little bit spooked by this stuff. I mean, he was so shocked that his head hit the lamp was going over the answering machine. His head hit the lamp and he went flying. It just was like, "That's Braden."
Yeah.
So that was the start of it. Then I sat around for a while thinking, I can't do this. Everybody else can do it, but I can't. And I found the A-Trans-C online with Karen Mossy and Martha Copeland, the Big Circle moms, and they welcomed me because Braden had already joined the Big Circle and was leaving messages, and people were leaving messages about him. And I mean, it was so overwhelmingly wonderful to say to all these people in this old Yahoo group. It was one of those old Yahoo groups coming in. "Oh, Braden came to me. Oh, I've got one about Braden. Oh, it was a couple of months ago. Here, listen to this. Braden is alive." And they said they were so clear that they all agreed they had to keep them whenever they would hear a Braden one because they didn't know a Braden.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's such a distinct name. What I find, being a medium, both of us are mediums, that spirit knows before we do what's going to happen. So your son knew that you would eventually make your way to this group, that this group, even before you had it in your head to contact them, he was already contacting them.
Yes.
That's what I find is happening now. Like when I first started contacting you, I'm getting this name. Do you know if this person's gone or if this person's still here? And I do the same thing now, is if I hear a clear name, I will hold it. Because I think down the road, I may have someone that says, "Oh, my mom's name is da-da-da." I said, "Wait a minute, I got your mom the other day."
Yeah.
So that is exactly what we still do
Yeah.
years later. In my knowing, that was something that I should do. Of course I should do that. I shouldn't just delete it.
Yeah.
And that in today's age, with cell phone technology, with Zoom technology, with Audacity, and all of those programs, we have more of an ability now to cut out that static noise, to amplify, like you said. And that's how it started for me, that I had another ability to take away the junk and go, I know that's a word, but what's underneath it? Or I see the spike, but I don't hear the word. And then I was able to amplify it. And
so before you go into this, because this is really important to say beforehand, because everybody needs to understand how interesting it is what you're doing. But we need to also make sure that we understand some terms. And you did mention that you do refer to what you do as EVP, but also ITC. So let's take a just real quick look
let's
at
do
that.
that. Let's
So
do
we've
that.
got ITC up here, which is instrumental trance communication. And then we pretty much just have two categories, audio and visual. Okay, so the audio is often referred to as EVP, unless it is direct conversational, direct voice off the radio, like Annabella Cordosa does, where you just turn it on and they start talking and you start talking. That's not considered EVP. It is audio, but it's more direct voice audio
Like
through technological means.
Yeah, like with Bocce, well, Marcello Bocce.
Like with Bocce doing his radio stuff.
And I'll put links below for everybody.
Yeah, and that is also audio communication, of course. But then you got the other side, which is the visual stuff. So ITC is the umbrella term. You know, you use instrumental technological means to communicate, and then you can do it either audio or visual or both. Like when the TV turned on, they started talking to me that one night in 2006, which we're not going to talk about right now.
You have that happen.
I don't want people to think I'm too nuts. Okay.
No, it happens. And you said to me early on, Donna, now that it's happening this way, you're going to notice more and more.
And you have, right?
I have, absolutely. They know they have your attention. So just as you, they started noticing that they have your attention. So I like that we just explain those words, because with the word even medium, I've been a medium now for over 10 years, that I don't even like that word, because I just don't think it encompasses everything. So the same with ITC. However, if you Google right now ITC, you will find not a ton, but because there are so many phrases that use ITC as an acronym. So you have to spell out
instrumental transcommunication.
Same with sometimes.
Yeah, same with EVP, executive vice president. I mean, you're going to get all sorts of things. Yeah.
Right. So in an EVP, as my experience, EVP has been when paranormal researchers walk into a spooky place and they get something on their transistor. That was always my term for spirit.
Or computer, or what you're doing is EVP.
Yes.
Anytime you have to, if you're not having a full-on conversation with these guys through some technological means that is more direct, anytime you have to go back and listen again and analyze and figure out what it is that you thought you heard, that's EVP. And a lot of times you won't hear anything if you're doing transform EVP. You don't hear anything until you put it on the computer and listen back.
So a couple of things I want to say. First, about EVP again is, like you said earlier, if I say EVP, a lot of people are going to think, oh, it's a ghostly thing, and Donna must have walked into a haunted place. So when I use EVP, I also say, could also be called EVP, could also be called spirit voices. But
well, you know what you can call it? You can just call it if it's instrumental trance communication, you can just call it your eclipse thing that you're calling it because your team wants you to call it that, but you can just call it trans audio communication, and that encompasses all audio trance communication, whether it's something you can hear on the radio or something that you're recording and then you listen back and hear. EVP is kind of like you say, there are certain terms you don't like. If you call it trans audio communication, it includes all the audio stuff.
But people don't know that term. Most people that I'd like to reach are people that have never heard that this was even possible. And so I love hearing all the terms, because I want to reach everyone.
Yeah, if you're not interested in dividing, the different types of audio communication, then you would use something like trans audio communication. You can use EVP if you want, but you're using Spirit Eclipse. But what you're doing is transform EVP.
I'm transforming. So even that term to me, you first said it and I said, okay, I agree. I'm doing transform EVP, which to me meant I was not using any other source, meaning I
Right.
wasn't using an app that was cycling through different sounds or words, or I was
Especially vocals. Yeah.
vocals, right? So I never even knew that existed. I didn't want to use that.
So there's opportunistic EVP.
Right. Right.
And there's transform EVP. Opportunistic is where you introduced vocals. Transform EVP is where there may be some ambient noise in the background, such as a fan running or water, but there are no human vocal sounds. So that's basically it.
Just a couple of weeks ago, because we've been talking for probably a couple of months, you had always been using transform EVP, and I've been hashtagging transform EVP on everything I post, and I've been saying in my posts as I described this is transform EVP. Just if anybody was out there reading it, that they would know I'm not using anything else. But then a couple of weeks ago, you said, you actually explained what transform EVP was, which means spirit transforms my voice.
No.
The static.
Spirit can transform your voice, but transform EVP comes out of nowhere most often.
Okay.
You may have a fan running. They're transforming available sound is what they're transforming.
Yes. Yes.
Opportunistic EVP technically is like radio sweep, or gibberish. I'm sure some people out there have heard of the gibberish method, where you just play a bunch of gibberish and you record that. And I mean, it's complicated, but you're not doing any of that. You're just doing regular transform EVP. And I find what you're doing to be very interesting, because most people right now, they're running out and grabbing the latest spirit box, or checking out the latest app, which is cool. I do all that stuff too. I don't limit myself. I'm not in a box when it comes to this.
Yes.
But I prefer transform EVP over everything else.
So thank you for clarifying even more, because even me that knows what I think a lot about it, I still don't know everything, because it's changing also. Every week we talk, you and I talk, I'm like, well, now they did this. And you're like, yep, that sounds about right. That like they can do that.
Yeah.
So what I'm beginning to notice just recently, because this started happening November of last year. But as I listen to my track, they are repeating my words. Not only in the other track, it's like they're playing, look what I can do. They are taking the word that I'm saying, repeating it in the other track, and also repeating it before I even say it. So they not only can repeat, look what I can do, your word, but they are also telling me, look what you're going to say right now. Now you're going to say this, and they do that.
Yeah.
So, and I find that every spirit is different. Every person I'm dealing with during a reading or with a client is doing something differently. When you and I talk, I don't hear them right now, but I'm fine with that because I'm not going to edit that out. But when we talked a month or so ago, they didn't stop. I heard them throughout. You heard them throughout. You can hear them blipping and going through on yours. And then when both of us re-listened after, because it wasn't communication, we weren't saying, hey, Braden, tell us this. We were just saying, hey, Braden. And then he would repeat. But we only heard it after we slowed it down or we looked at the other track. And your son, Braden, which goes back to everything you've been experiencing over these 20 years, is a vibrant, powerful soul and has the ability to do this loudly and clearly. So the first time I heard his name was after I listened to our conversation. He said it so loudly, Braden. It was clear. It was like he said, let me say it slow for you, Donna.
Yeah.
Raiden. And it hasn't diminished. I've tried to play that one a few times on a Zoom call and it didn't work. I do have some that are going to be able to hear. I've practiced.
Good.
I also noticed someone that I've listened to a month ago, I listen to now, and it's starting to disintegrate. It's starting to disappear. It's not as clear as it was when I first heard it. And I've noticed that that can happen also. The same that would happen for spirit card drawings, which are what I've done with Reverend Hoyt, which are my spirit cards, and you can see that on my website. And sometimes, and these are spirit drawn, and these will sometimes either grow or diminish also. Same thing is happening with
Interesting.
EVPs. Sometimes they can hold it, sometimes they can hold the vibration of speaking, and other times they can't. The other day, a feather came through as I was speaking with a client. We both saw a feather come right down beside my head. It was a big feather, and you could clearly see the fronds of it, and then it disappeared. So it materialized into our dimension, and then they couldn't hold it to keep it there, and it dematerialized as it was falling. And that's the way, because I've known about that. Those are called apports. I've known about that for 10 years plus. And that's the way I'm viewing these voices. Sometimes they can materialize the whole phrase, and other time it just comes out like a sound, a weird sound. But because I'm multiple tracking it, it's not just a steady line of static. They're using something else, and it could be just that underlying static that's good enough for them. We can't hear it unless we amplify it.
Or it could be nothing. It could be just if you recorded on one track, you would get the same kind of stuff. I mean, this is what Braden says about this kind of stuff. Just keep it simple, stupid, to me.
Yeah.
And not to you, but to me. You know, you don't know that much about these things. You aren't a sound engineer. You can't explain what you're doing. You can tell people what you're doing, but you can't explain how and why these things happen.
That's right.
So, you know, just keep it simple. We're going to work with you. We don't want you to go out and, you know, do X, Y, A, B, C through X, Y, Z just to get a hello. You don't need to do that.
Right.
Right.
And that's how
so the simpler, the better. So what I'm saying is, you know, like I got into this thing where I thought, oh, I got to have some kind of sound. Why? Because it's like, satisfy me right now. I want to hear it right now. So I got to have some kind of sound. Okay, so I'll turn this on, or I'll turn that on. And one night I was sitting there with nothing. And I thought, well, let me just try nothing at all. And sure enough, they came through just fine.
Yes, yes.
You know, so to me, that just says, don't get hung up on the technology. Don't get hung up on one way of doing things, and keep it simple.
Yes, yes. And I think because of the evolution for both of us in this sort of practice, you know, years ago, someone was in the place I was working and said their phone just rang and it said mom. And him and his wife looked at each other and they looked at me and I went, what's the problem? And he said, my mom is dead. And I went, well, that's interesting. Is it her birthday or the anniversary crossing? And he said, oh, it's her birthday today.
Good one.
They have many ways. So and I guess in a way I'm saying, of course, I've always known this, never anticipated it would happen to me, never asked for it. The words appeared. And then once I was doing every day, I was recording something with static in the background, and it was really making my head cuckoo. I just couldn't listen to both. Some interesting stuff did come through and I was able to save that. And then it happened in my car. While I was listening to the radio, a voice appeared out of nowhere that asked me to talk to someone in my town. So I said, okay, well, if you can do it that way, then I'm open. I don't want to do it the other way. I'm tired of all of that. And that's about when my sister and I, who produces my podcast, started to hear these voices on the other tracks.
Right.
And she said, oh my gosh, I've been deleting all those noises. And that was when we realized, well, let's use Zoom now and record multiple tracks and see what happens. So this is
Great idea.
the simplest I've ever done. I love it. I love
Yep.
it when I can hear it while I'm talking. So I mentioned to you before we started, I was doing a reading the other day and the voices were coming very clear. You knew they were saying because I recognized the sound.
Yeah.
And my client did not hear it. One time she said, "Oh, I just heard that." So afterwards I went and called it up, and sure enough, when those sounds were coming, they were saying something, but it just wasn't making its way through at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started to figure out how to get you guys here to hear my things through this, you can go to my Instagram page. I'll put the link below, Spirit Precipitation, where they are very clear. So I've been able to screen record what I'm hearing, and they're very clear there. Why I couldn't figure out why I hear them very clearly. I play them on my computer, but they weren't coming through on the recording. And something hit me a couple of days ago. Braden came through. Braden's was very loud. My voice was very loud, but Spirit's voice was not. Because I'm asking this question as much as I'm trying to process it. Spirit's voice is not a human voice.
No, it's not.
Right. So, of course, certain things won't pick it up, won't pick up that sound, like captions on Instagram. You can put on the captions button and it'll tell you what you're saying. And I'll get some pretty cool things that captions picks up, but it's not what they're saying. So
Okay.
they're trying
Yeah,
to
I'm familiar with.
minutes.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with doing Instagram. I quit Facebook in 2016. They told me to get off social media pretty much. For spiritual reasons for me. So I did. I don't do Instagram. I don't do Facebook. I do Zoom like this, but I wouldn't, do 3 different tracks because I don't do a podcast and I don't have that kind of wherewithal.
Well, let me
so
stop
I'm
you.
not.
Let me stop
I
you.
can't really comment with an educated comment when I don't know what it sounds like to post an EVP on Instagram, and I don't know how Zoom functions when you run 3 tracks. So,
Okay. So when I first started hearing them, it was not 3 tracks. It was only 2. It was they were just single tracks.
oh, that's right.
My voice and their voice. So they were talking when the other person was silent. I was talking, but the other person was silent. And that's when Spirit made their way in. So when I do it with myself, I'll run a second track in my other bedroom, in my other room by being
That's right.
on the phone and being on the computer. So just to give them space, if they're trying to use my voice box, if they're using those sounds to create, I wanted to give them space of an empty track so I could hear it better.
Yeah.
So that's
why they do transform practitioners' voices, and that has been documented clearly. And it's happened several times with me. It's like, I never said that. Right. And I started documenting exactly what I would say. However, when they do that, and when they make use of gibberish, they are using vocals. They're using our vocals. They're manipulating gibberish. They're manipulating sometimes phonemes or allophones or things like that. But transform EVP is a little bit different, because let's say you don't have anything running and you just turn your recorder on and there is no voice to piggyback off of. There's no gibberish. There's nothing. Even if you may have a fan going, there's no vocals. The practitioner isn't speaking. And yet loud and clear, you get clear words. Now they might be whispery or they might be growly. They may not sound exactly like a human voice uttering the same sentence. You can still hear it and it can still be considered a class A. That's not using your voice or allophones or phonemes or gibberish or anything else. That's why I like Transform EVP so much, because you run the risk of false positives, for one thing, when you're constantly using apps with vocals in them and you don't know what's in those apps. Um, you may want to run vocals reversed and try gibberish, but even then, I just prefer transform EVP. Not to say I won't do the other stuff, but in terms of proof of the afterlife, there's nothing like messages from the answering machine with no vocal input whatsoever.
Yeah.
There's nothing like a good old digital recorder and a few, Happy New Years.
Right, right. Which I have in my house. I purchased for, I think it was $4 at the local Goodwill. I purchased an answering machine. That's a digital answering machine. It's not
Good.
connected to anything but an outlet. I
Good.
said, you want to put something through that answering machine that we can all hear? That's great. And what I find very interesting, I just want to try the Braden one for a moment. And when he said, Braden, because it was so clear, we'll see now. I'll do it from my phone and we'll see if it you who's listening, I'm pretty sure you can hear it, but let's see if it does it when we re-record it. Anyway, here's Braden, and it'll play 3 times. That was him at regular speed. Could you hear it?
I heard this. Did you play it 3 times?
It played 3 times.
I only heard the middle part.
Okay.
The first part was a little bit drawn out. The third part was gone. The middle part sounded like Braden. And what's interesting about that is that it does sound like his voice.
Yes.
And I don't know if I told you that.
No,
but yeah.
Yep. Many times he came through during our talk where I said, "Hey, Braden." He said, "What?" And he said, he might have said my name, or he said, "Hey, Donna," or he said "Mom" a lot. He definitely said "Mom" a lot. "Hey, Mom" a lot. Times when you were telling a funny story, where that worm appeared in your house, when you were telling that
story, yeah,
his voice came in saying "Happy birthday," like it was a surprise to you. And you know how when you're surprised, someone says "Happy birthday." Right. And that was so clear too. So he's very good at what he does. He's very good at that. And we can attribute that to is you taught him that when he was here in the physical world. Now, the first person that started speaking to me, this woman, I'm pretty sure she knew nothing about this, but I don't know the answer to that. So she started speaking very clearly. And then I have guides that have been in this physical world 100 years ago, and I'm trying to get them to say their name, and all I'm getting is the syllables that they're saying their syllables. Like everybody knows Abraham Lincoln is my spirit guide. So I said, "Abraham, say your name." And he went, "Eh, b, k." You could hear 3 distinct syllables, and the first was a eh. So he was trying to say his full name. So that was the first time I had ever communicated clearly. They were responding in real time. I didn't listen to it later. That was real time. I heard them say their name while I'm recording. That was the first time that's ever happened in the last 6 months.
Well, get ready.
Yeah. Vicki,
although this is written up in a Annabella's journal there from 2006, when the TV turned on and they started speaking to me, and I actually got film of that, and wrote down some things that I didn't get on film. Nothing like that has happened since. So it's not like once you get some miraculous thing, suddenly they're going to walk into your living room and sit down and have a chat with you. It's going to get better and better and better. I was blown away. A couple of times I've had voices, come out of thin air. When I first moved into the old house that we just moved out of, I got greeted very loudly. But nothing like that television thing, nothing like that. I don't know, why sometimes this kind of stuff happens and then it doesn't further develop. But in your case, you're having all sorts of things that center around the same phenomenon, which is trans audio communication. So that's pretty good evidence. That's pretty interesting.
And let's speak to, because this happened to me 10 years ago in the middle of the night. I wake up and I hear in the corner of my room, because what type of spirit voice, I don't know what they call that, was in the corner of my room. This voice boomed out, "This is George Bernard Shaw." And I just said, yes. And I was already a medium. I had been practicing, so it didn't freak me out. But that was
Yeah,
all I
yes,
heard from him. So
that's
let's
funny.
talk a little bit about the person, which would be me or you or anybody sitting down, because I want to say, in no way will I teach how to do this. If you want to go do this, all I'm going to say is set a clear intention and call in your guides, even if you don't know them, call in your guides to be gatekeepers for you, which will only let things in that are purposeful for you.
Mhm.
So if you're
Yeah.
not a practicing medium and you just want to try this, someone emailed me the other day and she said, I tried it. And she sent me the recording. She was on her phone.
Mhm.
She was just recording herself through her memo, through her video. And I heard her father say, I love you.
Oh yeah, we get big circle moms
That was the
that's the
first time.
purpose of the big circle,
That's the
is
purpose of
for
it.
the parents. That's how it started out anyway.
Yeah.
You know, we aren't there to churn out EVP for parents. The original intent of the big circle remains the same, and that is to draw the parents into an interest in doing this for themselves if they want to. And if we receive messages from a loved one, we will share it with them. And we hope that they'll want to take it further. And if they don't, that's fine. You know, that's not a problem. But part of the big circle was because the three moms, me, Karen, and Martha, this is how we got through our grief. And we got through it doing it ourselves, not calling mediums every week. So I like to, not to say I wouldn't call a medium, you know, not to say I wouldn't have a reading, but I like to think that, you know, if you're a grieving parent, or if you're a grieving sister or brother or mother, or you know, child or whatever, and you have a strong interest in communicating with your child, don't call a medium every week. Try something yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's available. And I like to say, because of technology, I'll say the same thing. Why are mediums so prevalent now? Why is everything happening so fast now? Because of
Mhm.
technology, because we have the internet now. We can Google, this just happened to me, and see where someone else it's happened to, which is what's
Mhm.
helping me to find you. And now everybody who's listening to this, you can go research it or you can try it. The point, I guess, what we're trying to say, if you're going to try it, set the intention, put yourself in that atmosphere, because it's not meant to be spooky. It's not meant to be weird. It's not meant to be scary. It's meant.
So Braden gave us the three P's years ago. You know, he said there are three things to remember: prayer, permission, and protection. Okay. And because I wasn't doing all of those things, and he said prayer in whatever form that takes for you. So setting an intention and offering gratitude and accepting, you know, the gift that you're about to receive, right? Prayer, permission, protection. Protection is important. You know, there are some not so nice people out in the world.
There definitely are spirits that would want to come in and just say anything. I call them the randos, just the
Protection
randos.
is important. Yeah.
Not
And then the thing about permission, though, that's the one I often forget. Like, and I'll forget, and then they'll say, permission.
so
And
how
it
do
has to
you
be
explain that?
reciprocal. What's
Explain
that?
that. Explain permission.
Well, you need to give and receive permission for communication to take place.
So you're saying, like, I think we got the protection worked out, because even when I teach mediums to
Mhm.
further their ability, the first thing I say is set up a gatekeeper. You don't have to do it each time you sit, but set up of someone to be your gatekeeper. So there's your protection, however in form you'd like to do it.
Yeah.
When you're
Yeah.
saying permission, I want to give myself permission to receive and give spirit permission to, how would you say it if you're telling someone how to give
I,
permission?
you know, I'm not a very vocal about it. I just give, do the give and receive of permission to communicate, thinking of it like, I mean, you don't just go up to people and interrupt and start blabbing, right?
Right.
There are certain protocols in place culturally, and they differ culturally, as to how you initiate and close conversations. And this has to do with permission on both sides to engage in the first place.
Yes. Yes.
So
So
that's what I'm talking.
yes. So in a reading, that's exactly what I do. I will open the door by saying a phrase, and spirit knows at that time it's time to work. And
Yeah.
at the end of the reading, I close it and they know the door is closed now. So don't be talking to me afterwards unless it's good, unless it's really good. So I guess I would do the same thing, since I trust my guides and I know there are things only coming through for me and for my advancement here to help me and then possibly help others. That I would say, when I open up my computer and I set my intention, I'll just start with a beautiful hello. Hey guys, I'm here. If there's anything we'd like to talk about, I'm open to hear that. If there's anything you can say. So I found that, which I found this was interesting the other day. I'll say, is anyone here? And I'll hear yes. And then my sister said, you need to be more specific. So I was like, oh, I get it. Can you say your name?
Yeah.
Because they're just saying yes. Yes. I'm like,
right.
Much of an answer, like, because I didn't ask the right question. So be specific about what you want. And you're not going to go into long conversations with your loved one in spirit. If you're doing this yourself, set it to 2 or 3 minutes, saying, hello, I'm here. I love you. Would love to hear something from you. Very simple.
There you go. And this information on how to record, just very simple information on how to record, is posted every 2 weeks on the Big Circle site, because we still record every 2 weeks. Now, I've been taking a few months break here because of my living situation, which I told you about, but I've been, trying to buy and sell here, my husband and I, and it's been pretty stressful. So we've been taking some time to take care of that, but it's coming to a close. So hallelujah.
And so that speaks to, you want to be in a right frame of mind when you're speaking. So you're not discouraged if you don't get something.
Exactly.
The other day when I was speaking to Abraham, and he said and I heard that, and it was so exciting for the first time. For the next 2 days, there was nothing. There was nothing. And I said, I think I need to take a break, because I've been doing it straight every day for about 4 months. I said, I think I need to take a break. And then mental mediumship kicks in, and I hear them, and they're saying, Donna, take a break.
Yeah.
You need to understand that this is exhausting work. This is a lot of work, what you're doing back and forth. And you're also growing yourself, your own self, and you're putting yourself into different situations. So I wasn't in a right frame of mind. I was in more of a mind, I need to hear something. I need to hear something, instead of what would you like to say? So there's a difference between begging spirit to say something and being open to receive whatever comes through to you.
Well, and that's why I'm sure I didn't hear from Braden right away. I mean, certainly there can be orientation and whatnot going on, but when you're in such deep grief, even if you have psychic abilities or you're intuitive, you use the word medium to apply to yourself, even if that's the case, if your dearest loved one passes away, you may not be in the mental frame of mind to accept information from them.
Yeah.
So,
and don't be discouraged.
I mean, I did get discouraged because I thought, this is ridiculous, Braden. Here we used to give each other readings. You just told me 2 weeks before you died how psychic you were. And now you're not talking to me. It was like 5 months before he started. I think it was a few months before he started leaving the messages on the answering machine. But, you have to get strong. You have to get capable.
Yes.
So
don't discount everybody who's out there. If you saw a message come in and it didn't make any sense, I wouldn't discount anything these days. If you're thinking, if you're watching this video, it's come to you for a reason. I watched a random news video the other night, and I heard spirit. on that video. I heard the sounds that I hear. And I'm sure people are just going,
That's,
just delete that. Oh,
you
crap.
know, you guys think about this too, is listen to sometimes these 911 calls
Ah,
that they play right on like YouTube or any of those recorded phone calls. They could be 911, they could be witness statements,
you might
could
hear
be
them.
anything like that. You know, I often turn on and watch, you know, crime shows.
Yeah.
And I've noticed in those recorded sections, even online reading the Daily Mail, and they'll have a recording of a recording, you know, like a 911 call. You can often hear EVP in those.
You might hear it. So I think they've been trying to get through. I think Spirit has always been working our technology. We just haven't had the ears on to listen. And there are some people that'll hear EVP very strongly. You do have to have an ear for it. And then others, you have to be told what it said instead of hearing it. I like to put it out there and then put it through captions, because captions will sometimes pick up what I say. So when I first started, I was doing it through no, I was doing it through GarageBand, because
That's right, GarageBand. You told me that, which I haven't used for EVP.
I don't think you want to use it,
but it's just a recorder.
Right, it's another recording device.
Yeah, it's another recording device.
It's another one. It kept spiking and clicking throughout, and I didn't know anything about that. So I'm just watching the spikes and the clicks. I'm like, what is that? So I started Googling, what are the spikes and clicks when I record on GarageBand? And every message response I heard, people saying, I get those too. I just delete them out. No one explained what they were, but now.
And didn't you say some of those that sounded like clicks were actually words if you slowed it down a little bit? Didn't you say that?
Later on, I found that. But when I was beginning,
sometimes, yeah, you don't want to slow it down too much, of course, because the thing about EVP, and Donna knows this, but the thing about EVP is if you distort it, you can completely change the phonemes. You can completely change what the initial intent might have been or might not have been. Who knows? But the point is, as little editing as possible, so that you do not distort whatever EVP you think it is you hear.
Absolutely. On Audacity, as you slow it down, you change the sound of the voice. If you do it on voice memos on your phone, this is them.
Mm-hmm.
If you do it on voice memos through your phone, it only slows it down just a little bit.
We're both coughing.
That's all Spirit wanting to. That's my indicator. I don't know what I'm not saying, but let's do this. Let's play just one more. I want to play. This is proven. Okay. This is proving that they'll repeat what you say. And in this next one, I said, slowing down, speeding up. And right afterwards, they came in and said, speeding up. And you can hear the sound of them. This one you should be able to hear. Slowing down, speeding up. Slowing down, speeding up. Slowing down, speeding up.
Okay, now to me that sounds like okay over the over the waves here.
Yes.
So you'd have to. That's the other thing about EVP. Very often you have to use headphones to listen.
Yes, that's how I started.
I try to make sure that these days that my EVP is so clear that I can just sit there in the living room, turn it on and listen to it, knowing my husband is sleeping in the bedroom. So it's not on really loud, not wanting to wake him up. And even with the heating system in this house going, I have to be able to hear it. And if I can hear it, and I'll keep it around for a day or two and then go back to it, because, you know, one of the things you said was they seem to have the ability to, or the EVP itself can degrade. Now, some people say that that's not possible, or that the degradation that occurs would be what would occur normally on any analog tape, whatever. digital, whatever. I don't know. It has happened to me before that I've thought I've heard something. And then a week later, I go back to listen and I thought, where in the world was my head when I was listening to that? Because I don't hear that now. That, over the years, I've come to realize is not so much the EVP transforming itself. It's the fact that EVP is so complex and layered
Mm-hmm.
that you think you hear something. And yeah, maybe you do. But then 2, 3 days later, you hear some sub layers, and then that makes it into something else. And then you send it to a friend and they say, well, I don't hear either one of those, but I hear no, 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 no. Those are the kind of EVP that I don't keep unless it's personal to me. And as an intuitive person, I understand clearly what it says. Or if it's part of a trans audio communication story where I know what it says, and you may not be able to hear it exactly, but it turns out to be very, very true, either in retrospect or in the future, and carries through a storyline. Then I will use that EVP or let people listen to that EVP. Or if I'm trying to make a point, this is a Class C EVP, plain and simple. I can hear you're happy here. I can hear you're not happy here. I can hear, do you have your shower cap on? All this kind of stuff. So if I were you, I'd either keep it as a personal EVP if you think you hear something very clearly. But I wouldn't go out and try to convince anybody on the street that there's such a thing as communication from the spirit world through electronic means with that.
Yeah. And I think I agree with that 100%. And I think with the progression this has taken with me, that I'm starting to no longer use my headphones. Everything that comes through is very clear. I sent you one the other day that was just blessings. That was so clear, right? So clear.
Yeah.
And you guys can see them all on my Instagram page. So it's very clear, very clear.
Yeah.
Also, it's on TikTok. In case someone's not on Instagram, it's also on TikTok. So I am, like you said, only sharing the ones that are very clear. And with the progression here, sure, I'm hoping for further, but I don't know. I didn't think this was going to happen. I didn't think I'd ever become a medium until Spirit appeared in front of me. So it's very interesting that two major things in my life happened and I never practiced. I never assumed it was going to happen. Never had a thought in my head, but yet it happened. So one of my big messages as I teach is just be open to anything. Don't pigeonhole yourself to say, oh, I can only do this.
Which is what I did. That's what I did at the beginning. For months, I bought a little Sony 5010B, a really old one, now over 20 years old. And it sat in its packaging for months in the closet because I thought everybody else can do this but me. And then I pulled it out one day. I brought it with me when Mary Jo and I went on our little outing to honor the boys for their day because Braden died with his best friend. And there was a clear angelic EVP when I got home. And it was amazing. And I thought, well, I didn't, and it turned itself on. I did not take the recorder and turn it on and ask for any messages at all. I just had it in my purse thinking maybe I'll try to use it.
And it turned itself on.
It turned itself on. Now that could be from jostling. Listen, I'm an academic. I'm skeptical. That could be from jostling it. But when I heard what was on there, I said to Mary Jo to stop looking for a pen because it wasn't important. And suddenly, talk about repeating, a woman goes, it's not important. And then suddenly you hear angelic music and singing. That's on the Big Circle site. Scroll way down to a few years ago. It's on there. Yeah. So
Wow.
that convinced me, listen, you don't have to be, some bigwig EVP pioneer. Just try it.
Just try it. Just try it.
Mhm.
It's growing. It's growing. And Spirit's excited. They want to be able to help us with this. They want to be
Yeah.
able to do it. But like you said, it sat in the box. Like I said, it's been 10 years, over 10 years since I've been a medium. It might have been happening more. I just never noticed it. I was just never open to it. And then
Oh, well, think of all the 911 calls and recorded witness statements we've listened to over the years. It
yeah,
never occurred to me that all these weird, I kept thinking it's got to be feedback. Feedback is the explanation for a lot of things.
yep,
And sound engineers are quite correct that a lot of what we think might be anomalous is not. So that's the other reason we have to be really careful. But when in your situation, you're coming up with clear words and clear communication with no sound source. So
right.
I'd like to promote what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. And I don't know who these people are. Somebody will say, who's that saying that? I have no idea right now until they're going to say their name or tell me something else. it- I'm not having communication at this moment. I'm not talking with them
Well,
directly.
years ago I asked Braden said, or I don't know if we were having a semi conversation about this or not, but he told me that because oftentimes I would ask for names and not get anything. And he said one day to something to the effect of, you don't want to know. Because if you knew in these certain circumstances, you would be blown away. You wouldn't want to, you would be shocked.
Yeah.
Now I'm just like, okay, he didn't explain exactly what that meant,
Yeah.
but I'm assuming it meant that these are entities that it would really surprise me to know that I'm actually communicating with. Now that could be somebody like the technician from Mark Macy's IANT group. It could be something like that. I'm not saying it has to be a famous dead person,
Yep.
but he just was like, you don't want to know. Just get the information, use the information, and we'll go from there. Occasionally they'll say, but most of the time it's like names aren't important to them, and we know this.
We do. We absolutely do. And
Yeah,
what I took from you saying that, him saying that to you, it could be something like extraterrestrial. It could be a star race. It could be someone back so far that
that's the
you wouldn't
technician,
even
for
believe
example.
it, right? That you wouldn't
Yeah,
even believe it. That
that's the
my mom.
technician, for example.
Yeah. So what
Yeah,
about so that one I sent you the blessings? She
yeah,
sounded. It was a female voice, clear female
yeah.
voice, and it was
Mhm.
also it had an accent. It had some sort of inflection in her blessing.
It did. Yeah, yeah. And you might ask and get an answer, and you might ask and not get an answer.
It's just it was in the scope of an hour-long conversation. There were so many clear words during that conversation that didn't need headphones, and it all seemed like a different person each time.
Now there is one woman, her name is Sweejan Salter, deceased, um, parallel world type person, as I recall, but part of the original instrumental trance communication group with on the other side that was with Mark Macy, working with Mark Macy and those guys. And I did hear from somebody recently that they might be getting information from Sweejan Salter right now. So, I mean, who knows? You
You
said it
don't
was a
know.
female. I don't know. The technician, he's got a falsetto. So if you go to worlditc.org and you listen to Mark Macy's conversations with spirit, some are with people, EVP pioneers like Konstantin Radova, but then there's the technician who never has incarnated and is some sort of high level helper technician.
Yeah. So we don't know. Set your intention, have a clear one, and I don't know. Does it excite you? Because you said, Donna, you're so excited. Spirit loves that too.
Yeah,
It's exciting to me. And I just want more. I want to hear. Like I can channel a full conversation with Abraham or JFK. I can channel a full conversation, but that's not,
Yeah.
that's their voice in my head. It
Yeah.
would be fabulous if they could use that technology. I would love that. I would love anybody that could do that.
Yeah.
But we don't know. Like, I'm certainly not saying I'm the first one, and Vicky's not saying she's the first one. There
Yeah.
are people out there that do this that we may not have any knowledge of, that are doing it probably very clearly with their circle, that share nothing.
Well, there are people out there who, have full on
Right.
conversations with
They're-
spirit,
They don't share.
regularly. I mean, that happens to me occasionally.
Right.
But these people, it happens to regularly.
Yes.
So yeah, they're out there. And then there are people who, think around with it and,
right.
may get a word here or there.
It is my intention to share because I think it's a fabulous thing for people to hear. And I totally understand why people don't want to share. There's a lot of times I don't want to share my medium because I continually get feedback from people. I will. And I will continue to get feedback for this, I'm sure. But I think it's important to reach more people now because it's there. It's not just mental mediumship. There is a physical mediumship process, and it is happening, and not just with mediums. It is happening with people every day.
And the other thing is, for these people who might want to try, it's like, yeah, record for 2 to 3 minutes and see what you get. If you don't get anything right away, like you said, don't give up. I was told by my mentor, Tom Butler, who is the head of the A-Trance with his wife, Lisa. I was told to use 2 recorders when I was doing Transform EVP, to set them side by side and to let them run for 5 minutes. And that was my first, formal recording session, if you will. And I did that because, the studies show that if it shows up on one, it's not going to show up on the other if it's a real EVP. So, if a book drops in the room, you're going to hear it on both. But if it's a real EVP normally, and I say normally, it'll only show up on one recorder. So I did that. Listen to the first one, just sitting there, with my, not headphones, just the radio or recorder right here. Nothing. So this was 5 minutes of painstaking listening. Nothing. So I pick up the other one. I'm like, oh God.
5 more minutes.
It's not going to work for me. This isn't going to work. It's not going to work. Play. And right at the very end, so this is like almost 10 minutes of nothing, you hear Braden's voice saying, pick those up. So he said that it was right at the very end on one of the digital recorders, right as I was going in to get them. But I listened to 10 minutes of silence.
Yeah.
Just for that little tiny.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love when they do that. That happened to me.
Yeah.
The first really clear one I got was just as I was signing off after 3 minutes of sitting there and heard it very clearly. And they said, well done, friend.
Yeah.
Okay. At the end, bye. Because I'm clicking off now, signing off now. We don't know. We don't know. But it's so much fun figuring this out. And again, I'll state, you can research much about this. And Vicki, say right now the Big Circle's website. Can you say it in full?
So we have 2 blogs, and one is simply or only for practitioners who record for other people. So messages from the Big Circle. So that would be messagesfromtheBigCircle.org. And every 2 weeks, I haven't been lately, but I'm getting back into it once I get done with this buying, selling stuff, which is no fun. Every 2 weeks we record, and if anybody wants to come in and say anything from the Big Circle, and anybody can email us and say, hey, add my kid or my dad, I think he might want to come through, or hey, I'm interested in learning how to do this. So
when you say record, because I went on that site and it was confusing to me. When you say, like, if I was to say, hey, can you add my dad? His name is Moose, but I wouldn't listen. It would only be afterward that you would play it on the site.
Yeah. So we have 2 sites. One is the first one that I developed is welcometoeternity.com. Now that one includes more than EVP. It includes ITC, and it's going to include some other things in the future. The messages from the bigcircle.org is something that I created because what was happening is the practitioners were doing sessions every 2 weeks and just flooding the Welcome to Eternity site with, hellos and yeses and highs and things like that, which is great, but it needs a place. So the blog messages from the bigcircle.org is for our practitioners in the Big Circle and any interested parents who wish to share, but they don't have to. They can just share the energy, to record the first and third Thursdays of the month. And the information is all on both sites. So Karen posts every 2 weeks, we're going to be recording on this day. Here's how we record. We'll share our results that are, if anything's really interesting, we'll be sharing it with you, blah, blah, blah. It's been a little bit quiet this past winter because I haven't been around, and Sherry Faye, another one of our practitioners, has been really busy and hasn't been posting regularly. So, and Lance as well. So, but we're all talking behind the scenes and getting out of the muck of this winter.
So what you're seeing is there are people out there. If you're interested, you can contact me. You can reach Vicki through these websites. And I, like I said, am sharing my recordings that are clear on my social media. So you will be able to see that there. But if you have any questions, you can email me or post them in the comments below this.
And if I don't answer you and you email me, it's because there's something wrong with my email. You're gonna have to try again. But I normally, let's put it this way, if I don't get back to you within 24 hours, I probably didn't receive your email.
Yeah, there are definitely some things going on with computers. It's not the first time I've heard this, and Vicki and I have talked about this. So keep trying, or post it on my site to say, hey, I've been trying to get a hold of Vicki, or anything like that. We're all open. We want to share. We want to help. But again, I'm not teaching this. This is something that you're going to have to figure out and just get excited over, if that's what you'd like to do. So my link tree will be below everything I'm doing. Obviously, I'm still doing readings for everybody. Hour readings, half an hour readings. I am available for that. And you could find me everywhere on social media.
Yay!
Vicki, any closing thoughts about your excitement about going forward? What you think Spirit going forward has in store?
I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm getting a feeling we're going to have some surprises coming up here, Donna, that we might want to share. So we'll just leave it at that, okay?
I like that a lot. And the woman we mentioned earlier, our mutual friend Tanya, she has interviewed a few people that do this sort of thing. So her podcast is Life Continuing. I'll put a link below in that also.
Yeah, I'm on there a couple times.
And yeah, Vicki's spoken on there. I've spoken on there. She's talked to Mike Macy.
She's talked to Dan Drazen a couple times. Now, he's a good one to talk to about the technological aspects because he's a sound engineer and a documentarian and all that. So yeah, he's really with it when it comes to that kind of stuff. And he's got I should pump this. He's got a new book coming out, Dan Drazen. He's the guy, the filmmaker who did Calling Earth, which is an excellent film. It's probably the seminal work in terms of films on ITC.
Yes,
out there. I don't think you can find anything else like it. So
you can't. That's what I watched recently. That and the Bocce one, and the Sonia Rinaldi from We Don't Die. I'll put all those links below. Sonia Rinaldi's Sonia was that name. They just won an award. She does the steam in front of her TV and faces appear in the steam.
Yeah, so I know several people who do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're out there. All those things are out there. But just start. If it's what you want to do, just do it.
Start it. Hey, and some of you are going to be more visual than you are audio. And some of you will gravitate toward the audio. Now, I myself am more of an audio person, although I have had visual things happen. I'm just, I'm more into listening for messages than looking.
I'm ready. Whatever they want to do, I'll have it something available, but I'm not buying anything. I told them I'm not spending any money. Do with what I have. What I have.
There you go. Hey, that's what Braden's always told me too. Not only am I, pretty simple when it comes to technology, but it's an issue of money. I am not going to spend $1,000 for a spirit box. You guys, you don't need to do that.
You don't need to do that. You don't need
You
to.
can if you want. I'm sure they're fun.
Absolutely. But like that just leaves room for, what did you call it? False
positive.
Yeah.
A lot of those, although there are new apps out there that use nothing but static and randomly, and they randomly spit it out. I'm not quite sure how it works, but there are no vocals in these apps. So technically it's kind of this transform opportunistic type merger in these new apps, because there's no vocals, but it's still, you know what I'm saying? They're still spitting out kind of like a radio suite.
I'm convinced Spirit's using the static of that blank track. Because if I see nothing on the track, nothing, you'd think there was nothing there. There's no blips, there's no anything. But if I expand it, it's static, and then I could hear some voices. So it's sometimes very fast, sometimes it's very, very low, but there are spirits that are using just that static. They are underlying static that's available to them.
And that's the kind of stuff you'll never be able to understand, no matter what you do, because what happens is, in order to even begin to understand it, you have to edit it, which means you're going to have to distort it, which means you don't really know what they're saying. So all you're going to hear is kind of, it's kind of what Braden and I heard when we left it on for a few hours. You're hearing something, but you can't do anything with it to make it sound like words.
But you're giving Spirit that practice, that medium. You're giving Spirit that opportunity to practice that. And if, people are saying, oh, I didn't hear anything. Well, did you turn it up? Did you amplify it even more? But who would do that? Because if you don't see it, if you don't see a spike in your wave pattern, who would even do that?
You're not going to do that unless you're looking, unless you're a researcher. But the thing is, just whatever you do not distort your material, because you can't be certain of what you're getting if you distort the original so much.
Just play with it.
Anytime you hear warbling, you start to hear that kind of warbly sound, you've over edited.
Yeah, I don't use edit. Yeah, I don't use edit at all. I never did, except for let's just slow it down a tad, and that's all. Because it's fast. It'll come through fast. A lot of times it'll come through, and then you slow it down. Oh, that is a word. And every spirit is different. I don't know who I'm speaking to. There's a lot of spirits out there that want to talk. Let's give them the medium.
Yeah, so I'm not saying don't edit. You do have to, usually. I mean, sometimes I don't, but most of the time I have to do a little bit of editing, which means, I often whisper when I do EVP because my husband's asleep. So I have to raise my voice, and then I have to lower the EVP so that it's some sort of consistency. And those are things that we could never do in the old days, but that we do now as a matter of course. And if I have like one big blowout sound or a precursor click, which have been shown to occur in EVP, and I don't want it in there because I don't want it to distract the listener who may not be real familiar. I don't want that noise to distract them, so I will remove that. Normally I will tell them though that I've removed a click or a blowout noise or something like that.
So what Vicki's talking about, we'll end here. What Vicki's talking about, the precursor click, I had no idea about that. So for 3 months, I kept seeing these clicks, these high clicks before something and after something. And then she said, oh, that's a precursor click. And I'm like, I've never heard that word before. Immediately Googled it. And that's exactly what's happening. Spirit will click, say something, and click. So if you didn't hear in between the clicks, you would amplify that. And like, oh, there it is. There's the word. Didn't hear it. But when I amplified it, there was the word. And now I get a lot of clicks, a lot of clicks. Click and then click. And then I'm like, good try, good try. Didn't work that time though. Good
Yeah,
job.
you know, they say they can happen afterwards too, but I wonder why we don't call them post cursor clicks.
There's a post too. There's definitely a post too.
Because they do happen at the end too. Yeah, they can. Not always.
Not always.
Not always going to happen, but yeah.
When you're dealing with different types of spirits, you're dealing with different types of communication.
Well, and different devices here will
Devices.
make a difference.
And there are things that I'll hear on Audacity that I won't hear in my voice memos on my phone, and vice versa. So you can't say, oh, there's nothing there. Put it somewhere else and try to hear it. You just don't know. Might as well try it. If it doesn't take a lot of your time, just try it.
Well, and see, there's the thing. You love this. You're having a blast. You're going to experiment. You're going to try these things. And we encourage anybody else out there who wants to have fun like this to go for it. Yeah. And experiment.
And you don't have to do it in the dark. It happens
No.
all the time to me. It happens no matter what time of day. I don't have to be meditating, but put yourself in a space where you're still excited, and they'll be excited too, because that's just what they want to do. But Vicki, I can't thank you enough for joining me. I'm sure, like you said, we will be coming out again and telling you guys. I'm excited to see what's else.
It'll be exciting. I hope so. Yeah. This is great.
All right. Thanks
Thanks
again
for having me on.
You're welcome, Vicki. Take care.
And I'm really excited about what you're doing.
Good. Me too.